Hello everyone, my name is Rosencrantz and this is Guildenstern and we are very much still alive.
Just kidding, it's Aaron and Ari here. Welcome back to another episode of a podcast where two theatre people who are fairly unqualified in theatreness talk theatre. If you noticed, I fiddled that intro. If you've been with us for a while, I've fiddled that intro a little bit. I've swapped the very unqualified to fairly unqualified because I think we should stop underselling us. I now have a degree in theatre and performance.
Let's up the self-talk.
So we can't be very unqualified.
Well, technically speaking, you are literally qualified.
When I get the certificate.
Well, yeah, but
in
like
a couple
technically
of months.
speaking,
But
you're
exactly.
you're
So I
qualified.
felt like I was listening back to it and I was like, I gotta stop one of my, not New Year's resolutions, but
Habits.
New Year's habits is to stop underselling myself in things. And
I think that's a good habit to have.
yeah, saying that we're very unqualified is very unfair. We are, doing things which makes us more qualified
Also,
than
it's
very
not like we
unqualified.
haven't- I mean, we've spoken about this before, but we've studied.
Exactly.
You have.
Well,
a
that's what I'm
certificate.
saying. Now
Now you can be like me.
So yes, very unqualified is now fairly unqualified. I didn't want to get rid of the unqualified
experts.
component because I think that lets us talk stuff.
We should understand our shortcomings.
Exactly. We're not perfect.
But
we're
also,
not professionals, but we
up the
are.
self-talk.
Yeah, self-talk, positive. Anyway, that was a long ramble just to explain why I changed the intro.
Before we go any further, today's episode is sponsored.
Woo!
Yeah, sponsorship!
Sponsorship!
Today's episode is sponsored by Artificial Design. All right, Artificial Design is a Melbourne-based design company focused on digital creation and modern-day techniques. To celebrate the launch of the website, which is shopartificialdesign.com, all one word, all lowercase, you can use promo code RnG20 for 20% off. If you're watching the video version of this podcast, I'm sorry, audio listeners, I'm doing the one thing I swear I'd never do. But I'm wearing a beanie that's from them.
Very comfy, hiding
really
his bald
good,
head.
hiding my terrible haircut. But yeah, they also sell shirts and pants. That's kind of primarily what they do. I got this beanie because they were like, it's okay, we know that you wear shirts, so you can wear this
have a beanie
and I was
instead.
like, thank you, that's very nice.
Maybe we'll wear the shirts at some point.
Yeah, we'll
whip them out.
I probably should have brought some and been like, here. But I have worn the shirts before. They're really good shirts. The designs are cool. So yeah, shopartificialdesign.com and use code RnG20 for 20% off. This bit has gone on long enough. I need to disclose, this is my brother's company. So
we didn't get onto sponsorship that soon. 3 episodes in would have been pretty.
We're not really getting much money for this. I just went up to him and I was like, hey, look, I want to put your brand on the podcast, so I'm gonna write up a sponsorship thing. And he was like, really? I was like, no, we're gonna do it. So yeah,
here we are.
Here we are. I've sponsored myself.
Genuinely, beanie is very.
But
comfy.
actually, though, like unironically, I mean, sure, there's bias there, but help him out. He's a young startup trying to kind of get himself out there in terms of his brand and his appeal. So if you can I'd appreciate it. He's my family, and I think his stuff's really good. So I'm not just shilling for him because he's my brother. I wanted to make sure that he had as much of a chance as he could to make sure that this brand does well. So yeah, I would appreciate it if you go check it out. But anyway,
links will all be in the description. You'll be able to find it all in Spotify, YouTube, all of the above. You'll be able to get there. We'll pop it on our Instagram.
Yep.
We'll
maybe that's where we'll see the shirts.
Yeah.
We'll post some
there
photos
you go.
of
We'll
us
give
on
you
the
some
shirts.
photos in the shirts. You have a whole array of shirts.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We did a rehearsal.
Formalities.
Yeah, sorry, formalities done. We ticked the legal button, even though there's literally was just me being like, I'm going to say this. But yeah, tick the box.
We did that part. We've had a rehearsal since you last saw us. We got into the space. Aaron said that I'm going to take...
Space.
By the space, I mean Aaron's kitchen. Also, full disclosure, Aaron has told me that I will be talking for the majority of this episode because apparently he talked for too much last episode. So if you were there, he did in fact ramble for a very long time.
I was driving home and then I was editing it and I was like, I talk for so much and I kept cutting you off.
It's okay though, we all love the stories.
I know.
We all love the stories.
I need to
anyway. So I'll chat for a little bit. You'll have to hear my voice for the first little bit.
If you start to dwindle, I'll try and...
Yeah.
But
yeah. I will start to dwindle. My ability to continue in a straight line for a long period of time without losing focus is very, very low. But
based upon last week, so is mine. It's just that I kind of go all over.
Your stories just go in circles. Anyway, so we had a rehearsal, yay. And we plonked around Aaron's kitchen, which was good fun. We've been in there a couple of times already, so this was probably third or fourth time where we've actually, moved around a space that will kind of resemble the space we're going to actually work in. And that's why we're using his kitchen, not my kitchen, because his space
is a little bit more open.
Is a bit more open, a bit more spacious, has a lot of the similar location / placement of how we want our set to look. Again, it is not perfect because it is not the space. So last episode we told you how we basically went through the entirety of the script and chock full of blocked it of stage directions, blocking, things like that. So we had a really good idea once we went back into the space on how we were going to block all the scenes, which meant
a blueprint.
Exactly. Which meant we were able to have a pretty good stumble through like the entirety of the script and just kind of like, you know, bumbled our way through to the best of our ability, given the fact that we had notes for all of the, you know, the main bits of movement we wanted to do. And so I'd say that went pretty well. I don't know, how'd you feel?
It's the first time I think probably either of us have ever worked in that way before, where
that's true.
It's not blocking for blocking's sake, but it's blocking to just visualize the blocking you've already done in your head, which is really interesting, and I think it worked quite well in this case. And again, it's unconventional just because we are the people doing everything. That this is a rare occasion where it would happen. We can't expect necessarily to apply that to every single set we go on. But it does also give you a new kind of sense of thinking in terms of pre-preparation for a blocking rehearsal, of knowing something so that you're not just going in with no clue. And it does help kind of ease that flow of that blocking rehearsal, which is good. It's useful.
I think it's interesting with that as well, though. There were definitely times when, you know, like, I feel like your imagination can be so full of good ideas sometimes, and I find that, like, you know, in my head I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be, you know, I'll you know, put the bowls down like this and this will happen.
Yeah.
And you sort of get at the space and it doesn't quite look the same way it did in your head, or like you have a particular vision and it didn't pan out. And I feel like there were a few occasions where I was like, oh, hold up. When we were writing this the other day, and like the thing I've written in the notes, it didn't, I don't think really quite worked, or wasn't as impulsive or instinctual as I thought it would be. Like I was like, oh yeah, might be natural for me to slam down the bowl, but no, you know, it felt forced, and I think we want to avoid having any
that's
forced
come with us basically being in the space anyway, which is why it was still beneficial. But I think for the most part, the process of it was really smooth.
Yeah.
Like it was really like, well, this is what it says. Let's try this. Okay, that works. And for the most part, the stuff that didn't work were kind of just little details, like instincts that we had that were a little bit off. I don't think we had to do any like major rewrites or changes like that.
No, and I think that's sort of where we're sort of headed as a bit of a quick, like, you know, where to next. We're thinking about how we'll, like, now we've already run the whole thing, we'll go sort of scene by scene, kind of how we originally intended to start with.
Yeah.
But now we'll sort of just go scene by scene and fix those little tweaks and sort of refine things. And that'll, you know, only get furthered when we start learning our lines and you know, eventually move into a space.
We actually were able to get through more scenes doing this rehearsal than we did before in other rehearsals.
True.
And I think a lot of that was because we didn't waste a lot of time trying to work out the blocking, that it was just like, well, let's kind of do this. And we got through like probably a good chunk of the show just in one day, which is really good. And we have basically that part of it being like, well, great, this is done now. But yeah, other than lines and the space.
And in saying that, like, the difference was we weren't rewriting the script as we went, which we have been in the past. We've been going and rewriting, whereas now we've kind of pretty much got a script.
The dialogue
so there's
is done.
There was no like, oh my gosh, we need to quickly rewrite this scene, or these lines aren't working. The lines were all working. The issue was just we hadn't been in the space for long enough, and it was a first stumble through. But yeah. There we go. Segue! So the next thing we want to be doing is learning our lines, which for a 2-person show that goes for, you know, an hour, nearly, maybe, there's a fair few lines that we both have to sort of do. I mean, the good thing for us maybe, or the bad thing, and I was thinking about this last night as I was falling asleep. I was like, the good thing is a lot of the lines are in our words.
Yeah, I was
But the bad thing is the same thing.
Yeah,
because then we get into this loop of like how easy it would be to improvise.
Exactly, yeah. And then you throw
and
each
how
other off.
and how easily we could get lost down rabbit holes. Or just like, in general lose some of the power of some of the dialogue that we've written. And I was thinking, gosh, that does require us to have some semblance of discipline to the line learning process, and not sort of just throw it away and go, as long as I get the general gist of this line, it'll be okay.
But I don't think that's necessarily, like, on the point of improvisation and getting lost, I think the essence of the line is important. And while if we want to get things as line accurate as possible, if we slip up, let's say the phrasing or the order or a specific thing, I don't think it will matter so much, and it won't be noticeable. And I think as long as you just respond with the next line coming, and it's not like you don't create new dialogue, right?
Yeah.
But if the dialogue that's already there is, if we forget something slightly or something's around, and I think, well, that's kind of the idea anyway. I don't think we need to be like, we don't need to we should learn the lines word by word, but if worst comes to worst and somebody stumbles on something or goes in a tangent, we'll try our best to steer it back.
So basically just do what any actor would do for any script.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay.
It's
True.
kind of what you just said, but
yeah,
no.
Like, but I know normal actors aren't writing their own dialogue. Right?
No. I mean, some are.
That's true. That's true.
But I think, my point was more from the standpoint of, I think there could be an inclination to just kind of
riff,
hope for the best and learn the lines in more of like a theme-based way, and rather than like be like, oh, now I talk about the dishwasher, now I talk about dishes, now I talk about food.
I see.
And I think that can sometimes, or for me, that gives me a lot of anxiety. I feel like you'd be perfectly fine doing that, maybe, because I feel like your ability to kind of just talk and steamroll through the talking might be a little bit higher than me, where I will be like, hang on a minute.
Yeah, that's true. But I wouldn't I wouldn't do it with actors who wouldn't also do it. No. Like, that's bad improv.
But I feel like you think I probably can, and I don't think.
I don't know if that's true. I feel like.
But that's just. But so that's. Yeah. I mean, on that note, so how do you learn lines? What's your? I don't think we've ever had a conversation about what your
that's true.
sort of strategies
It's weird
are.
because we
really
run lines with each other so often as well.
That's true. Like, the number of times we'll be, but I don't know what your strategies are. Prior to coming to me and saying, here, can you read opposite? Like, I don't know what your strategies are.
Mine, well, I find, and it's been good because I've been acting in something, you and I have been in this other thing, and I have had more lines, I think, in that than I have recently, because I haven't had a lot of lines.
For the first time, I can help you with lines now.
And you have fewer.
Just hanging
but
out.
it was cool because, like, I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't learnt lines, like, more than like 5 or 6 lines a show in a long time. And it was interesting to see just how much I just kind of knew it by doing the blocking. So when I'm doing the blocking, because we do it maybe 4 or 5 times, right? We're rerunning it, and then you just kind of ingrains. And I think, I mean, I think you as well. I think both of us just have like naturally good memories just because of how long we've done lines. And I think that's how I attribute, I think, my memory in general is like, well, I've done theater for such a long time that I've trained myself to learn lines quickly, and that kind of can translate to many other things. Like essay writing or whatever, or anything like that, where like I'm good at remembering text. Yeah. Because that's just something that I've taught myself how to do, and I don't really know how. Yeah. It's almost like
people
intuitive.
have asked me the same question, and I'm like, gosh, so I actually had to think about like how I actually go about it. But
it's just a good memory. But I think it just comes from doing it over and over again. And like I remember the last time I did a big show, which is where I did Godot. Last time when I did Godot, and that was the last show I did that I had to learn lines for an entire piece from start to finish. And that's another 2-person show.
Yeah, there you go.
What I would do is whenever I'd go into bed, I would start the play, and then I'd just read the whole thing before bed, and I would probably not sleep, and it would be like an hour. Yeah. So, but I do it quicker because it's in my head. I'm not saying it out loud.
Yeah. When you say read, you mean like recite,
like
not read it.
No. Yeah, I would like recite it in my head.
Yeah, that's really cool.
The other benefit of that is like because I need to know my lines, I also need to know the other person's lines. So I just indirectly learned both Vladimir and Estragon's lines because I knew what they had to say, so that I had to respond to that. So, and I think that's just kind of intuitive, and it's hard to like. I think the best thing you can do is to just recite them and try and go over them and do it in a similar enough place as like it wouldn't be beneficial to sit down and recite it, but to stand in a somewhat space. You don't have to like do your blocking exactly, but to get into a performance mode, I think helps me memorize, because I go, okay, I'm in the acting switch. I flip the acting switch, and now
so interesting.
I'm in the line reading mode, and it helps me remember.
I'm about to completely turn that on its head and say I do the complete opposite. I find learning lines in any kind of like under any kind of stress in any kind of performative situation, if I'm standing up or if I'm, some people pace. I mean, I maybe have a little place for pacing, but like the best place for me to learn my lines is when I'm not thinking about the fact that it has anything to do with acting or being on stage. It's like,
interesting.
I think it's something to do with like, I feel like someone has actually told me this as well before. It's like to do with like the whole flight or flight thing. Yeah. And how if you can learn, or for me, I find the best place to start learning my lines is in like the least strenuous, least stressful, least confronting environments, like while I'm washing the dishes, or while I'm in the shower, or while I'm, like folding clothes, something that, you know, is very mundane. I'm very comfortable in it. It's not like, oh my gosh, I'm scared something could happen that way. And then, you know, eventually get to the stage. I feel like also then it starts becoming second nature the same way like folding clothes or whatever becomes.
That's true.
But if I was like, I know I've tried in the past to sort of, especially if I, you know, for a self-tape that I need to film like immediately, I'll have it, all the stuff like set up, and I'll be like, okay, I know it's fine. I can just learn the monologue now. And I'll sit there in front of the camera trying to learn the monologue. Yeah. And all of a sudden, like my ability to learn any lines is like, or like if I'm going to a rehearsal and I realize I haven't done my lines, oops, my bad.
That happened to me last week.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, we were meant to have lines down, but, you know, scripts down. I'm so much less able to like learn them because for some reason, like it's all the parts of the brain that require memorization are like, nah, not today.
Yeah, that was
sorry,
like,
kiddo.
That was like me last rehearsal that I forgot. I didn't read up on my lines. I had a busy week the week before, but I knew my lines. I just didn't know when they were, you know? Like, that's the other problem. It's one thing to know your lines, but if you don't know where or who they come after, I had the script purely because I didn't know what line was before my line. And that's the biggest problem as well. Like, that's also something you need to study is, like, not just what your line is, but what
I recently started this technique, which I'm not sure whether I love yet, but I was doing it purely because I didn't have, especially over COVID, it was really hard to have someone to read opposite unless I use my family, which, you know, isn't always the most, like, chill thing to do.
Wow, okay. Slander.
No, yeah. Not in that way. Just is not. I can't just be like, hey, can you 24/7 be reading lines to me? It's not everyone's ideal cup of tea. That's true, they don't want to sit there opposite reading like a 20-page script
over and over again.
And as I fumble my way through them. And obviously that's probably, in my opinion, the most important part. Actually, like practicing them out loud with someone else or with the other person reading your lines, unless it's the monologue, in which case, enjoy that white wall. Over COVID, that wasn't as easy because we're not seeing as many people. So, like, often Aaron and I will run lines together and didn't have that. Or other friends I've got will run lines, couldn't hang out with them as much. I don't like doing things over Zoom, so I just avoided that at all costs. So I started doing this thing, which someone recommended to me, where you record all your lines. And I was like, how does that work, though? Because it's not my lines that I'm struggling with. It's knowing when the other person's lines are. And also, so what I did was I would, like, if I had a script, I would read my lines whispering, and then the other person's lines speaking. It was like some weird kind of ASMR where, because I was like, oh, I also need to know how long my lines go for and also help learn my lines. So I'd whisper my lines. So I'd be like, I'm trying to think of any lines that I did, but I like, again, blank. But
that's the other thing is after a show finishes, anything you've done for that show out the window.
Never, ever, ever for me.
No.
I have lines from like grade 7 musicals in my head.
No.
I think I could go through the entirety of the first 4 scenes of the Year 7 musical in my head.
The show we literally just did before the one we're doing now, I knew it word for word. I could not even give you one
I think
line.
I could do it all.
No, I can't believe you. That's crazy.
I would do it now, but then I feel like we're like...
No, let's not do it now.
But it useless stuff in my brain. If this cleared, maybe I could create. Maybe
that's
I could.
Why. I think that's
it's
why.
All full.
I only ever have room for one show at a time, so I have to empty it out.
But yeah. Of an interesting way, which maybe you can try, is recording lines, and I found that really easy because then while I'm driving or
actually that's what I was just thinking about.
In the shower with the speaker on, things like that, where you just have lines going. I mean, it's not so you have to get over the initial hurdle of listening to your voice, which I know a lot of people have issues with. I definitely I'm working to be okay with listening to my voice.
You record yourself multiple times on a podcast.
I know.
You learn to live with it. That's why I had to,
Hey, editing the podcast is actually really helping though.
Yeah,
and listening back, because I'm like, okay, I have to get used to the fact that this is how my voice sounds. Yes, okay, maybe my accent isn't the same as it used to be, or I don't like some of the inflections, or how my voice often sounds panicked for some reason. I just have to get used to that. But so hey, record your lines. Do them when you're not feeling stressed. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what everyone else's techniques are.
I'm going to try that technique and come back to you on that. Because now, now that I'm driving more often, now that uni and everything started back up. Well, not yet, but almost. I think it's a couple weeks. I don't know when does it start? I don't remember.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I'm not at uni. I wouldn't have a clue.
Check my calendar as to see what. Either way, and if I'm not listening, because usually I'm listening to podcasts, but if I'm not, then I could just run lines, and that's a good thing to do. Just on the drive there, that's actually that's a good idea.
As long as you're not running your lines while you have your script down below you.
No. That's at the point.
That's unsafe.
Well, that's the point.
Drive safe. That's why you record
whispering.
it.
You have the whispering lines that you can
exactly,
remember.
and that's why.
Really smart.
you can turn it down on the things so the whispers you can't hear, which is what I sort of got to a point where it was like whispered enough. It did sound like really creepy ASMR because I was like whispering my lines to myself. It was like, my good Lysander. I don't know why I went to Midsummer Night's Dream. That was like 500 years ago.
Mine also went to Shakespeare for some reason.
But Romeo.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's a good. I think that's a good.
The only other thing we could briefly mention is getting into the space is probably really what we need to do.
Because that was the biggest thing we thought when we were rehearsing was look at Ice was like, you're going to take this, and now we've talked equally, but that's fine.
Okay. It's perfect.
This was a podcast. I feel like I'm not running this time, but when we were blocking, we realized just how much we were like, oh, this is great. If only we were in the space, you know. Like,
or not even that. Just like the next step is really just making sure that it is because like scripts down and get in the space. Yeah. Those are the next few steps, and there's not much we can do about that. You know, to be honest, your space is pretty decent.
It does the job.
We can't do much better anywhere else.
Yeah.
So
unless we got into an actual state.
Into the space, but even then, that would require set and stuff. And honestly, the most important part, I think, for the most part, is that big bench, and we'd need the bench. As a sort of closing point, the next thing we'd want to be doing is getting in the space, getting our scripts down, and going more scene by scene in terms of refining. Yeah. That means we may not have as much sort of like post-rehearsal content. Like, we'll still give you updates on how the rehearsal went, but like, we'll
probably get more into now actual
stagecraft design
stuff,
elements,
not just talks, but like actual like how we're going about
and production related things as well, not just a play-by-play of every rehearsal, because they're going to start looking fairly similar from here on in, and you don't want to hear us say so rehearsal went pretty well, we need to learn more lines, or Aaron didn't know his lines, or Ari didn't know what she was doing, or la da 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 da.
That's okay. But I think that's still, it should still, if you're here for the theatre content, there'll still be theatre content.
Yes,
we're not going to just suddenly stop. So.
I think it'll be more engaging theatre content as well, because it won't just be us talking about how rehearsals went that you couldn't see and you weren't part of, and we can't give you spoiler alerts, so we just kind of waffle around.
Which will be really exciting at the end of this show when we do a massive big
how did it go
post-mortem type look back at everything, and we can talk spoilers, we can talk everything, and be like and not have to kind of go around certain topics that we don't want to talk about before the show, but that'll actually be really good. Anyway,
I think that concludes the theatre element of the podcast.
Thank
so
you
if you are listening on Spotify, your Spotify will be wrapping up very shortly.
Yes.
But if you do want to hear more, we do have some more stuff to chat about. See more. Head to our YouTube again. Plugging it all on all the things. If you just joined us for this episode out of nowhere, the last two ones we've already let you know, but we've also got a YouTube channel now.
Yes.
Check out our Instagram where we'll have all the details, or our Spotify description will also have the YouTube channel. So, boom, head over there, and we'll chat for a little bit longer if you want to hang out with us.
But until next time, we'll meet again.
I love our little laugh. Now they get to see the awkward moment afterwards where we're like, okay, did we finish? Is that fine? Did we say it in time?
Also, there's the at the end of the episode, we're gonna sing.
Is that the end?
We're gonna sing it. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
It's the most awkward ending.
That's all right. And there's also the giggle afterwards as well. Where we
don't cut out the giggle in the podcast, do we? The end.
Sometimes I
like
fade
I did.
out.
I
do like a little fade out because it's like,
we'll meet again.
We'll meet again. It eases people in and out of the show.
So anyway, hello.
Welcome.
You can now see us on all.
Well, unless you were already looking at us, in which case you could
sorry,
see us.
You still see us.
Yeah.
Hope you're all doing well. Hope you enjoyed that first little bit about theatre.
Yep.
Now we'll just chat for a bit more. You got boosted.
I got boosted today. Yeah. I went to get the booster, and I wasn't sure I was like, look, just be fully aware that like I could be not well, but I didn't expect to. I think tomorrow everything is gonna hit. So tomorrow is my rest day where I'm like, I'm not doing anything. But it was nice to.
I reckon, personal belief, you can psych yourself out of symptoms. If you just say you're gonna be fine, you'll be fine.
Well, I've been fine the last 2
Exactly.
times.
So you'll be fine this time.
I highly doubt that I'll have any side effects.
Oh, that's a different jab.
It is a different jab, and like the people I know.
As in different jab. He got AZ. Now he got a Pfizer. Pfizer or Moderna?
I got Pfizer.
Pfizer.
But the people who I know who didn't get symptoms from the first 2 AstraZenecas did get symptoms from the Pfizer. So possibly.
Same. That's the same thing I've been hearing.
So who knows? Either way, I'm not.
I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
Mentally prepare yourself to do it. That's what I did.
If anything, it'd just be like a day of me lying on the couch and watching TV, and I'm like, I want to do that anyway. If I can just have an excuse. Yeah. So like,
just have a nap.
It'll be fine. But it was really nice because where we live, in Melbourne, which we've said.
Where we live in Melbourne, which you've said.
Now there's the new initiative to get like kids under 11 vaccinated and to get like that part of the population, which is really I didn't realize how much they were pushing it until I went to the clinic today to get the booster, and there were little hopscotches on the ground with little koalas that said "Welcome to the magical healing zone." And I was like, as a 21-year-old,
that would have gotten me.
I liked it. I was like, this makes me feel like kind of it soothes me. And as a person who's kind of a little bit, I'm always a little bit like, oh, you have to go in and I have to get this thing and it needs to, I have to be safe and whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's nice. So I went in kind of feeling soothed, I talked with everyone, and then they were like, oh yeah, keep going through. And I went in to get the vaccine, and I was sitting there, and my hands and I'm like this, and I'm gonna brace myself to get stabbed by a needle. And the person,
so dramatic.
The person doing my vaccine was like, can you relax your arm? And I was like, oh yeah, I forget to do that literally every single time. They're like, can you relax? And I'm like. It's like somebody telling me to stand up straight. I'm like, I'm sorry, didn't notice how much I was like fully tensed.
That's so crazy.
But yeah, it was fine. It was easy. And then when I was walking out, I saw two kids, and one probably like maybe I'd say like 9 and 6 or whatever, and they both had little books, and they were walking up, and one had a mask on, and because you have to put on surgical masks before you go into the clinic, they were like, oh, can you switch your mask? And the girl was like, oh, but I have one on already. And she's like, yeah, but you have to put this one. Can you put it on top? And she's like, yeah, that's fine. And she put it on, and then the lady was like, oh, I see you two have your books. They were both carrying books, and they were like, oh, that's good. You can do some reading. And she was like, yeah, they told us to bring it so we can read while we get the vaccine. And I was like, that's so cute.
I want to read while
and I was like, yeah, where was my text message that was like, make sure you bring a book.
Your booking is at 9, whatever. Please show up.
On time.
Don't forget to bring your books or your entertainment.
It was really cute, and
so
it was nice. It was very
better than
relaxing
phones as well, like iPads.
It's better than being incredibly tense sitting there.
Yeah, no,
if I had a book, I needed a book. I could have used like
to be honest,
magic or something.
Yeah. Oh, hey, I got it in the cupboard over there. But it's just sad that I still have picture books. I love picture books. They're the cutest things. I don't want to get rid of them just in case like some random 3-year-old wants to.
We'll use them as
exactly.
As
well, no, that's
scripts.
fine. But what was I going to say?
To be honest,
I feel like though the length of time, I've been very impressed how efficient the jabbing process, the jabbing process is. I don't feel like I wouldn't have had enough time to read a book while it's
That's
just,
true. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you're done.
But I think that's kind of the point, is they get them like, oh, open the book. Oh, look at that, it's already finished now.
And they're like, oh, I didn't even start reading.
Well, that's what the 15 minutes wait time is for, I guess. I sat there and I was looking at my phone and I looked up and my neck was sore and I was like, oh man, I've been looking here for 15 minutes. And I was like, is this a side effect or do I just have bad posture? And I was like, I just have bad posture.
You just have bad posture.
But that was okay.
That's a New Year's habit I'd like you to work on.
Yeah.
From me to you, your posture.
Fix my posture. That's pretty obvious. You can see, I saw it the last episode and probably in the first one. The last episode, I looked like a triangle because I'd snuck down and my shirt was still up, so I looked like literally like Quasimodo. But anyway, I gotten used to it. I'm walking through the shopping center or like just in a public place, and I look over and I see myself in a reflection, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like almost 90 degrees.
If anyone has ever had one of those like shocking back thingies, let me know whether they work, because I was gonna get one for him for Christmas, and I wasn't sure if it was worth my while and money, because it seemed whoa,
bruise.
That's a bruise.
What'd you get hit?
Cricket.
Oh, is that from which game?
No, the Sunday game.
Okay,
Sunday. This isn't the game we talked about in our last episode, because my pads, I have the cricket pads are the same pads I've had since I was 11, 12, something, playing in the under 14, so maybe 13 at most, but definitely not, long time ago, like 7 years ago maybe. But I love them to bits because they're just really easy to run with. They're definitely a little bit shorter than they probably should be, and my thigh pad clearly doesn't go the distance, so there's a big hole.
You got the sweet spot.
And in the tiny little hole there is between the pad and the thigh pad, I got a nice purple bruise. You can't see it, but
that's the sign of actual.
It just surprised me.
That's true kind of like talent, is hitting that sweet spot.
It definitely wasn't that I was fully trying to hit the ball and it somehow missed my bat and hit me in the leg. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, that was just a random little influence. I stretched my leg down and was like, what is this blueness?
That's what this bit is for. It's like the other day, I don't know, I think I did tell you this ages ago, back when we went to the beach and I got terribly sunburnt. I came back one of the days and I looked at, and I was like, and I was, spraying myself down with after sun spray, and I saw that I had like this blue mark on the back of one of my legs, and I was like, is that a sunspot? Like, if I just like cause the sunspot to spawn because I haven't put sunscreen. I was like, oh, this is really bad. Like, and I was pressing it, and I'm like, it doesn't hurt. So I went up, and I was like, I'm looking at it, and I went to my brother, and I was like, is that it? And he's like, that's a bruise. And I'm like, but it doesn't hurt. And I'm like, he's like, we went to the cricket nets. Did you not get hit? And I was like, oh yeah, I have this like memory of getting hit literally on that exact spot by a cricket ball, which is probably explains why. I'm like, it's not a sunspot then, is
Cricket
it?
is dangerous.
So yeah, that lesson learned. Turns out you can wear all the pads and helmets and gloves and everything in the world, which your gloves need to be changed, by the way, if we're talking about equipment.
Again, another pair of gloves that I've had since I was about 11 or 12. They have holes everywhere.
Yeah.
They're okay, so I was looking... this is an interesting topic. So I was looking at the said gloves. It's okay, this is not cricket related, it's generalized, but it is in relation to cricket. And I was looking at them, and we were wondering or my brother was asking me what size they were. And I was curious. I was like, oh yeah, I'm not sure. I thought they were youth.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out they are the size below youth, which happen to be called boys.
Boys size.
When I bought them. I'm really curious as to whether that is still a thing.
Is that different? So that's different to youth.
Youth is so youth, boys, small boys, extra small boys. That was the order, and then it goes youth, small adult, medium adult, large adult, or extra large adult. And I'm curious. This isn't something I've googled, which I'm going to go do after this actually. Whether or not they still call them boys, because I don't think that because.
Yeah.
That's assuming the girls.
Nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, when I started playing, it was, still, we were the first girls' leagues.
That's what I was going to say.
So I understand then, and they were bought about 7-8 years ago, maybe. But I'm just curious as to now whether or not it's youth, small youth, extra small youth.
Yeah, possibly.
Or
because to me, youth and boys is the same size. So if I was a parent trying to buy a thing, I'd think to buy youth.
Yeah.
And I'd see a youth glove, I'd be like, that would fit my child, you know. I wouldn't think that there'd be a smaller size called boys. That
and there
make
is
sense.
because I was on the reason I saw it was because the packet I had, which had the gloves, which I still have in my bag, had like what you put your hand down, and they show you all the sizes, and
that's cool.
which I thought was really cool, and I put it down, and I'm still supposedly a youth. Anyway, small hands apparently, right. But I'm definitely not boys or small boys, which is what I have. But yeah, I'm very curious.
I'm not small boys anymore.
Probably. At least I think adult. Now. At least it wasn't man. It was
that's
adult.
what I was going to say as well. It's like it's interesting that it's boys but not men.
Yeah.
So, but
I think it was adult. To be fair, I don't remember. But I just remember.
Even then, like women's professional teams weren't very big. 5-6 years ago?
Yeah, that's
true. Cricket was still very much a masculine sport.
So who knows? Maybe that's something that's changed.
I don't know.
That's a little
it
side
would
tangent.
be interesting to check. Yeah, because I mean, there are a lot of like sports that were traditionally male dominated, and I wonder if they have similar sizing conventions like that.
Yeah.
And whether or not they've changed. I would assume that they would. But
who knows?
I don't know.
That was a little interesting tangent on the
that
cricket.
is
Again, more cricket content. Sorry,
all of you arts. And maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's a cricket person out there that's like, this is what I'm here for.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that I was gonna get cricket content.
The theatre cricket crossover that everybody needed.
There's the Venn diagram. There's the third person in the middle of it. But yeah.
Anyway, how's your week been other than that? Anything exciting? Anything new?
No, not really. I'm just getting ready to do more uni stuff. I'm really kind of looking forward to going back.
Yeah,
because
I can imagine.
That's a really good excuse to get out of the house and do things. And considering that for the most part my units next semester kind of are easier than I have been doing because I'm just kind of doing art stuff for a bit while I'm working on making sure that I find units.
Also, when you say easier, I think it's important to realize that maybe not necessarily easier, maybe more engaging or like for you, because I feel like
easy.
Just because
I find them easier.
That's why I'm saying, but as a generalized thing, we shouldn't say that arts units are easier.
No.
I think that's just something to put out there because I find it very frustrating when people are like, "Oh, but arts units are just easy." I'm like, yes.
Well, sorry.
Sometimes.
I should give context. They're comparatively easier for me than doing my IT units.
For you personally.
That's what
Everyone
I'm
has a
trying to say here. Yes. No, I'm not making a general. Yeah, that's a good point actually.
Sorry.
And,
I just feel like that's something to jump out with before people come at us for being like, but arts isn't arts isn't easy. It's like, no.
I feel like we should talk about that as creatives as well. That's really interesting. But yeah, going back to doing primarily arts units as opposed to doing kind of half both IT and arts units, I feel like I can do arts units. It requires less effort from my part to do art units because it's something I enjoy more so than IT. Not to say that I don't I do enjoy IT, but it's not to the same extent where I can I can kind of arts units I can kind of give everything.
There's a passion
there. There's a passion there which is less in IT. Not that there isn't one, it's just lesser. So yeah, it's nice. It'd be exciting to go back, and I'm doing it for the reason to try and convince myself that I do want to go back to uni because the last couple of years it's been like, phew. But yeah, it'll be nice to do that. But it's I don't know. I feel like I want to talk about this now.
I was going to jump on it if you weren't going to.
No, that's all I wanted to say about going back to uni because I'm excited to get back to do stuff. But I think there's and arts as well is such a broad term. It encompasses so much. Like, to think that, like, even my IT degree, which I think is incredibly broad, is nowhere near as broad as the entirety of the arts degree. Like the varying things I could do majoring wise in arts is absurd. Like, I could do anything.
Yeah, I think for me, and it's a habit that I found myself falling into as well, because I was studying an engineering and an arts double degree. And when people are sort of asking me where I'm at with that, and, you know, telling them, I'm actually graduating with an arts degree, and I find myself going, oh yes, a very hard arts degree. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, well, all my electives were engineering subjects. You know, I had all the first and second year engineering units as my 8 allowed electives. But just because engineering was hard for me and arts maybe wasn't as hard or whatever, or I didn't have to, you know, the amount of time I spent on a lot of my arts units was like significantly, you know, more than some of the engineering units. And I think there is this assumption that because it's not maybe, you know, STEM oriented, or because it's not whatever it is, that arts units must be easier because it's essay focused or something. But you ask anyone that, you know, has more of a STEM oriented brain to write a 2,000 word essay, and they'll go, oh, no, I'd rather, you know, do 7,000, you know, lines mathematical equations or lines of code. Exactly. Like,
I mean, I find myself in that sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I like, to me the fun of art is the creation process of art, and I do like writing about it, absolutely. But, like, to think that, like, the most effort I've ever put into a university assignment is for an arts course, but was for an arts unit. But, like, the time that I put into that one assignment is more than I've put into, like, I probably had put into all of the assignments for even that unit combined. And like that, and to think about that now is like, well, if I equivalate that to an IT degree, that would be like me, right, like sitting down in an IDE and coding for like 9 hours straight. And like, that's not, I wouldn't encourage someone to do that. And looking back on me doing that assignment for arts, I'm like, probably shouldn't have done, like, that was just because I was so passionate about it.
I don't think you shouldn't have done it.
Well, I think the product was it was worth the effort, I think. But I was like that's not necessarily like, I was like, oh wow, that's like a lot of work, you know, like that's a lot of work. It was an entire day. I didn't eat lunch because I was filming, you know, like that's not, that's dangerous per se. But like, I was that kind of hyper focused on making this thing, and I found it really easy because of my arts thing. But I think that there are, of course, there's people everywhere who could put that kind of hyper focus into literally anything, and to them it's a breeze, it's easy. It's just like, I didn't even think about spending 9 hours on a project. Like, it's just because I love it so much.
I think that's what I found really interesting about doing engineering and theatre primarily. How I found engineering so taxing and so difficult personally. Because I had to spend so much more time to understand some of the simpler concepts, or the way my brain worked, it just required a little bit more time. That wasn't to say I was, you know, any less competent in the end. It just took me a little bit more time, where some people were able to hear a concept and go, yep, cool, done, move on.
Yeah, that's exactly
and
the same
in theatre, I'm able to sort of hear a concept, go, yep, cool, move on. But there are definitely people in the class who are like, wait, what? Or like, I need more time. And so I think it's, you know, I think the main thing I want to say is it's person to person, and never feel like you're doing an easy degree. If you're out there doing an arts degree, never feel like that's an easy, or like a, you know, a walk in the park or a hall pass way through, you know, post-grad education or graduate education. It's every degree is, you know, I mean, I'm also saying this to, you know, reassure myself partially, but I like fully, like, with all my heart believe it, that like
work is work. A
degree is a degree, and like, no matter what it's in, no matter what people tell you, or the value of your degree, it's still fantastic, it's still awesome. There are so many things you can do with it. You know, the knowledge and the skills you learn during that, and just like, even just like practice of like studying, not even like necessarily, you know, what am I trying to say? Like, the actual product of what you've learned in the degree. It's actually the process of how you learned it, and, you know, being able to learn those skills and be able to, you know,
and the people you meet along the way, and the connections you make along the way, and all that is also just as important.
Long waffly tangent about, you know, be proud of whatever degree you have, and whatever, or if you don't have a degree, like, be proud of where you're at and what you're doing, and, you know, however far you make it through. There's merit to everything,
path, you know?
and
like, that's fine.
Like, I think it's sad that we do judge quite a lot about, you know, people about, you know, their level of education, or their choice of education, or their lack of education. And, you know, I know some fantastic people that haven't finished high school. I know some fantastic people who, you know, are doing PhDs at like ridiculously young ages, you know, so there's a spectrum. look out for your friends. Everyone's doing awesome things. You're all on great paths.
Upping the self-talk.
Yeah, look at me.
This is great.
I'm really
This is the self-esteem episode. I'm loving this. This is great.
This is the self-esteem episode I needed to, boost my own self-esteem, I think, because it's really important. And I know I've been noticing in the past, actually this is interesting, I've been noticing in the past week that, I don't have as much self-esteem as maybe I probably should. And I don't care for myself maybe as much as I should either. And I think a lot of people maybe post-COVID are kind of realizing that as well, that they don't, because you have sort of spent, 2 years of your life, like, really much, like, with yourself. Yeah. But where you, like, I realized I don't think I really was doing everything I could have been doing for myself. There are things that I've, stopped doing that I, that mattered a lot to me that now I've, starting to put back in, exercise, mindfulness, all the things like that, you sort of laugh at. And I definitely was kind of like, I don't really need that. People are like, yeah, exercise is important. Yeah, meditation's important. Yeah, mindfulness. Yeah, eat well. But like, now I'm sort of realizing how important those things are. And I'm really glad that I'm finding the time to sort of put them back into my life, because man, benefits exist.
Those things are invaluable, I think. Exercise especially and mindfulness are two things that like contribute so well to both physical and mental health, and that kind of get brushed off. And like it happens to me every time because I don't exercise as much as I should. But there's a couple, there are like week periods where I'm like, I'll run every second day, and then for those 2 weeks I'm like, I feel great. I feel so like good? This is what and then I stop and I'm like, it's too much work. And then you kind of go in and out of that flow state, and it's difficult. That,
and I think that's sort of going back to my make habits thing. Like that's where I'm finding the most success, making these things habits and making them really like small and achievable. Like I know previous years, and I've been talking to a lot of friends at the moment. Obviously, everyone's in that whole New Year's resolution kind of stage still, probably, even though we're several weeks down the track.
Quite a few.
But everyone's still in that kind of like, I'm trying to do like run every single day, or like big things, and like I've been there before. I've been like, I'm gonna work out for an hour every day. Like, good luck with that. Like, find an hour in every day.
Yeah, that's true.
So like I, starting with like, can I sit still for 10 minutes every morning? And I started, can I sit still for 5 minutes every morning and just shut up and close my eyes? Because I find that difficult. I find it really difficult to shut up and like just be with myself and like be okay with that, and not be thinking about like, oh my god, I need to go make breakfast. I need to go and do the things. So and now I'm sitting at 15 minutes every morning.
Yeah,
where I can sit still. I could barely sit still for 2 minutes before all of this, and now I'm like, hey, I can actually kind of sit with myself. So
that's good.
My message is start small. Be like, I'm gonna do 2 minutes of exercise, even if that means 10 star jumps.
Yeah. And
then eventually maybe you'll be able to find the time. If not, also 2 minutes is better than 0 minutes. Is my logic. So
keep
doing that.
Self-worth.
Self-love, self-esteem. Feel yourself. Do things that make you feel good and not make those around you feel good. Don't do stuff for other people. Don't work out for someone else or for something else. Don't eat healthy because someone else told you to. Eat healthy because you want to eat healthy. All things like that. Lie on the couch because you decided you wanted to lie on the couch that day, not because no, seriously though, like I'm so big, and I feel like I'm not at a point where I'm qualified to ramble about this yet, but I'm so for this idea of like intuition, and your body knows what your body wants. Food related, exercise related, rest related, pastime related, like whatever, in that moment, if you're really in touch with your body, which a lot of us aren't, and I can't say that I am, if you are in touch with your body will know what you want.
Yeah, true.
When you're craving sugar, there's a reason you're craving sugar. That's, like sometimes there's not, like sometimes you have an addiction or whatever, but like
that's different.
And like once you get, but like I reckon, and I don't know if this is grounded in anything, but I do believe that like when you're craving something, your body is trying to send you a message.
And
that you're deprived of sugar, or you need some fats, or you need some sleep, or you need to just bum around for a day. And so I reckon if we all just let ourselves listen to those impulses for a little bit, eventually they'll get sharper and they'll get more right, and they'll get less, negative or bad for us, and maybe we can live a little bit more in touch with ourselves, because I think as a society we are starting to sort of separate from, ourselves and fall into some trap of being something else, which I don't know.
being
again, this is all a concept I'm still working on in my own head, and it's starting to come to me. But hey, maybe if in 20, 30 episodes time, you'll have a full-fleshed lecture on how I've finally conceptualized.
We'll take bits and pieces from every week,
and finally I can conceptualize this into a book, which is actually something I'd love to do. I would love to write a book. I started one way ages ago about this exact concept.
Really?
And then I was like,
That's so
I was like, intuition. And then I was like, not qualified yet. I need to experience some more stuff myself.
Yeah.
And also I think get in touch with like my intuition before I start blabbing to other people about how they got to follow their intuition. Because,
that's something we can talk about. Writing from experience.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a big thing because I find this especially it's hard nowadays. And like, obviously, in a situation like we're in currently, be safe about it and not like don't run to the hills and do a bunch of things all over the place because just for the sake of getting experience, if if you're endangering yourself. But also like you can't expect to be a good writer if you don't have things to write about, right?
Yeah.
So it's important as any sort of artist or even any person in general, right? To be able to move outside of what you would imagine as a comfort zone and to explore areas or topics or people that you think might not necessarily, or maybe you haven't before. And I think that's a good kind of way to better oneself in any sense is to kind of push yourself to do more and to try and do it in a way that isn't just either behind a screen or on a surface level, but to dive really deep into things and make sure that you fully understand anything, really, like any concept, any idea, any person, anything. Like that's where and I have found myself, I think in recently in the last couple of weeks, starting projects and scripts where I'm like, this would be so much better if I spoke to someone or spoke to people or went to this place and immersed myself in it because I'd feel better qualified. And like that's a big conversation nowadays in terms of like appropriation and writing whose story is it to tell. And I don't know necessarily where exactly I stand on that. And I think as a writer you are qualified to tell any story, but I would encourage all writers to make sure that they tell their stories to a good extent and to a very respectful level. And unless there's a very specific reason you're writing from ignorance, which is to say that you can do that, but like make sure that you're doing that respectfully is even in itself. But yeah, especially nowadays, and there's so many resources to do that. Like it's so easy to make sure that you're doing whatever it is that you're doing justice. That I think, like to give an example, I was thinking I had this idea for and this is a really simple example, but I had this idea for a movie which is like kind of a simple story, kind of almost realistic looking thing at a year in the life of somebody who is like a mall Santa.
Oh yeah,
I did mention this. I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast. I don't think I did.
No, not on the podcast. But yeah,
so
about it.
It follows basically from January to December this kind of older gentleman who works in December as a mall Santa, and
Santa
that's
Claus.
kind of as a Santa Claus, yeah.
I just like you to specify that. The way you're saying Santa to me, I was like, wait, Santa.
Santa Claus.
Saint Nicholas.
Saint Nicholas, who works like in malls, and he makes most of his money because he's kind of retired and he's not really. He makes most of his money in December, and then he works off and lives off that money for the year. And I was like, that I'm sure that exists, and there are people like that out there. And
I don't know how much more Santas make though.
Yeah, true. But that's the thing that I like. I started writing it, and I was like, oh man, it would be so much easier to write this if I'd had just talked to one person, one person who works as a Santa, and just like kind of interviewed them and talked to them about stuff, and I'd be like, that would be
Problem
so much,
solved.
And it simplifies the process. I don't have to do any work then because I have this like person who I can talk to about it.
Yeah,
so I was like, that is so much, and that's so much fun. It excites me to be like, oh, and then I can feel like an investigative journalist, going and being like, with my little pen, being like,
really cool.
So how often do you work in the mall?
Hey, do you have any funny stories?
Tell me things like that, and like that sounds like a really like that's something that is so weird to think that like even 4 years ago, my future self would be like, oh yeah, I'm going to interview a Santa and I'm going to chat with him for a few hours today, and I'd be like, you're 22 years old. Why are you doing that? And I was like, I don't know, I want to.
So if you're out there listening and you happen to be a mall Santa, please let us know.
RnG are alive.
Please reach out.
RnG.live at
RnG.
Instagram. Or comment on the YouTube video.
Live.
There's another way for people to interact. Comment on the YouTube channel.
Hey, comment and
I forgot about that now.
Leave a
Like
comment.
and
Subscribe. We should be ending that. What the?
We haven't been doing that. This is YouTube.
So 3 episodes in, we'd just like to say, hey, if you're enjoying our content, please please
and
subscribe.
That
really
way,
helps us out.
You know when the new episodes come out, and you can listen to them here instead of on Spotify if you want to listen to us on video the whole time. So that's
please do that.
Time.
That would help us out.
And also all of the new things, you get notified as soon as all the new stuff comes out.
Yeah, and when we start get less podcast stuff and more shorts and films and skits and all of the above.
Yeah.
I can't believe we haven't been doing that, Aaron.
Whoops.
We had an ending, but we didn't really have a proper ending.
No. But like and subscribe.
Oh well. And on that note, I don't think we have really anything to add other than if you are a mall Santa, please reach out. I hope you're all doing okay out there. It's a crazy time.
Push yourself and push yourself up and out to do better. I don't know.
Keep going.
That was kind of. I just thought that was good. Okay. Up and out. Push yourself up in terms of self-esteem. Push yourself out in terms of experience. This has been a really kind of philosophical episode today, hasn't it? It's been nice.
Two very unqualified philosophers talk.
That we should never do that.
Hey, I did one philosophy. I did one philosophy unit at uni. So, but on that note, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed.
Like and subscribe.
And we'll catch you later.
Alligator.